When I first looked at myself in the mirror that morning, I hesitated. The dress was simple, a soft beige with lace at the sleeves, something I had carefully chosen to look respectful, not flashy. I had tried on 8 others before settling on that one. I wanted to look nice, not make a statement. But mostly, I didn't want to embarrass my son on his wedding day. That was all I was thinking about. The shoes were low-heeled, the same pair I wore to his graduation from medical school, and the small necklace around my neck was a gift from my late husband. I didn't wear makeup often, but that day I put on some light powder and a touch of lipstick, just enough to hide how nervous I was. Daniel hadn't called me that morning. I figured he was busy. I had texted him 2 days before, asking if there was anything they needed. He didn't reply. Claire, his fiancée, now wife, had never been warm with me, but I never imagined how far that would go. When I arrived at the venue, the valet took my keys without making eye contact. It was a large, expensive estate with white folding chairs arranged in the garden and flowers everywhere. I stood for a moment, taking it all in. The air smelled like roses and fried appetizers. I saw Claire's mother laughing near the bar, holding a champagne flute. Her sister, too. A few people I didn't know. Nobody came to greet me. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I walked toward the seating area and spotted one of Claire's cousins. I think her name is Lindsay. I waved. She looked at me, gave a tight smile, then turned her back. That was the first sign something was off. Still, I kept walking. My name wasn't on any of the seat cards. I looked around for someone with a clipboard, someone organizing things, but everyone avoided eye contact. I finally saw a woman with a headset and asked if she could help me find my seat. She looked at her tablet, scrolled a bit, and said, "Are you with the bride's side?" I shook my head. "I'm the groom's mother." She frowned. "Oh. Let me check." She stepped away. When she came back, she spoke quietly. "You can sit in the back row." I blinked. "There must be a mistake." She shrugged. "Sorry, ma'am. That's what I was told." I didn't argue. I sat in the last row, behind all the guests, where the view was half blocked by a decorative column. The ceremony started 20 minutes later. Claire walked down the aisle like a princess, radiant and composed. Daniel looked nervous but happy. I watched them exchange vows through teary eyes, even though I could barely hear them. Nobody looked back at me. Nobody even acknowledged I was there. When the ceremony ended, I followed the guests toward the reception hall, clutching my purse, wondering where I should sit this time. I didn't see any table with my name. I wandered for 5 minutes until someone finally pointed me to the overflow table near the kitchen doors. There were 3 other people at the table, an uncle from Claire's side, an elderly woman who didn't speak English, and a teenager who spent the whole night on her phone. No one spoke to me. Halfway through the evening, Claire stood to make a speech. Everyone quieted. She tapped her glass and said, "I want to thank everyone who supported us during this journey, especially our family, our real family, who stood by us every step of the way." She smiled in my direction. Then, without breaking eye contact, she said, "And thank you to those who knew when to step aside and not make this about them. This is our day. Not everyone needs to be here." A few people chuckled. That was when she said it. Loud, clear, no trace of hesitation. "You can leave now, Margaret. Really. You don't belong here. And frankly, you smell like mothballs." The whole room went silent. For a second, I thought I misheard her. Then I looked around. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't stand. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. He just kept sipping his wine. I stood slowly, feeling the heat rise in my face. My hands shook. My knees, too. I reached for my purse and walked toward the exit. Not one person stopped me, not one. Outside, I stood alone near the parking lot trying to catch my breath. The music continued inside. Someone laughed. I could hear silverware clinking. I felt invisible. Less than invisible. I felt discarded. I drove home in silence. The radio was off. My phone vibrated once. Probably a spam call. Not Daniel. Not Claire. Not anyone. When I got home, I took off the dress, hung it in the back of the closet, and sat down on the edge of my bed. I hadn't felt that kind of humiliation in my entire life. I had raised that boy on my own after his father passed. I took extra shifts to pay for his tuition. I sold my jewelry to help him get through his first year of med school. I co-signed the mortgage for the house they live in now. That house exists because of me. And still, they treated me like trash. I didn't cry that night. Not a single tear. I just sat in bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I made coffee, fed the cat, and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was the mortgage folder. My name was on every page. I still had partial control, and for the first time in years, I wasn't scared to use it. I closed the folder slowly. The coffee had gone cold. They thought they could humiliate me and walk away with everything. They had no idea what I still held in my hands. I didn't sleep the night after the wedding. I laid in bed with the mortgage folder sitting beside me like a weight I couldn't ignore anymore. I kept flipping through the same pages over and over again. Page 4, paragraph 2, that was the one that mattered. 4 years ago, when Daniel and Claire wanted to buy their house, they couldn't get the full loan amount approved on their own. The lender said their combined income wasn't enough. Claire had just changed jobs back then. Daniel had student debt and very little savings. They called me asking for help. Daniel sounded rushed on the phone. He said it would just be temporary, that they only needed my name to co-sign so the approval would go through. I said yes without even reading the full terms. That's who I was back then. That's who I had always been for him. I put down $58,000 from the small life insurance policy I received after my husband died. That money was supposed to carry me through retirement. But when Daniel said, "Mom, please, we need this," I said okay. He promised they would refinance the house within a year and remove my name. That never happened. I didn't push it because I thought I was helping them build a future. I didn't ask to be paid back. I didn't remind them how many repairs I paid for when Claire didn't want to spend their savings. I didn't say a word when Daniel asked me to cover the new kitchen countertops as a housewarming gift. But after what happened at the wedding, after Claire publicly told me I didn't belong and Daniel didn't defend me, I couldn't keep pretending things were fine. So the morning after, I put on a clean sweater, tied my hair back, and made an appointment with my lawyer. His name is Frank, and he's been handling my will and documents since Daniel was in college. He knew most of the situation already, but he didn't know what happened at the wedding. When I told him, he sat back in his chair and didn't say anything for a long moment. "Do you want to move forward with the exit clause?" he finally asked. "I want to remove my name," I said, "and I want my money back." He nodded slowly and turned to his computer. "We can initiate proceedings, but it will require notifying them officially." "I understand," I said. "I just want it to be quiet. I don't want to make a scene." He raised an eyebrow. "Margaret, they made a scene. You're just responding." I didn't say anything back to that. We scheduled the first filing for the following Tuesday. On my way home, I stopped by the grocery store. I passed by the bakery section and saw a small chocolate cake with "Congratulations" written in blue icing. I don't know why it hit me like it did, but I stood there staring at it for almost a full minute. I used to buy cakes for Daniel, for every milestone: high school graduation, med school acceptance, his first job interview. I always showed up with cake. That day, I walked past the cakes and bought toilet paper and frozen peas. That's all. When I got home, I sat in the kitchen and opened my email. No messages, no missed calls, no apologies, nothing from Daniel. That's when I realized he didn't think he had done anything wrong. On Thursday, I received an automated notification from the mortgage company. It was the monthly payment reminder. I had been auto-paying it for 48 months, $1,112 every single time. Quietly, without complaint. My checking account showed the same line each month. I never brought it up. I opened my banking app and canceled the recurring transfer. Done. Later that evening, I reheated a bowl of soup and sat by the window, watching the neighbor's dog bark at the wind. I thought about all the times I had been left out, all the events they never invited me to, the dinners, the housewarming, Claire's baby shower that never happened because we want to keep it just immediate friends. I had stayed quiet through all of it. I had convinced myself I was being dramatic, that maybe I was expecting too much. But that moment in the reception hall, when Claire looked at me and said I smelled like mothballs in front of 100 people, erased every excuse I had ever made for them. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my sister. Not my friend Lorraine. Not even my neighbor Karen, who always liked to gossip. I didn't need anyone's opinion. I just needed peace. That weekend, I started boxing up some of Daniel's childhood things from the attic. Not to throw away, just to reclaim space. I found his third-grade spelling bee ribbon, the old sweater I knit him when he went to college, the framed photo of us from his wedding to Claire that I was never given a copy of. I put everything in a storage box labeled Keep. Then I cleaned the house top to bottom. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to feel in control of something. On Monday, Frank called. He said the preliminary motion was filed and a formal letter was being sent to Daniel and Claire via certified mail. They'll probably receive it by Wednesday or Thursday, he said. Okay, I replied. Do you want to prepare for a phone call? No, I don't think they'll call. He paused. That might be true. When Wednesday came, I didn't leave the house. I cleaned the blinds, did laundry, and waited. Around 1:17 p.m., I saw the postal truck stop in front of my house. The same truck would be stopping at theirs. The same letter would be inside. By 3 p.m., Daniel still hadn't called. By 5 p.m., I received a text from an unknown number. Is this some kind of joke? I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked the number. I had nothing else to say. Later that night, I got an email from Frank. Received confirmation of delivery. They've officially been served. Next step is a response or silence. We'll prepare for both. I closed the laptop and turned off the lights. The silence in the house felt different that night. Not empty, just mine. The next morning, I poured coffee and opened the window. There was frost on the grass. A new season was starting. I stood there a long time. They took so much from me. My savings, my time, my place in their life. But now I was taking something back. And they didn't even see it coming. 2 days after the letter was delivered, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. I didn't recognize the number, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Same number. Then again. And again. At 9:21 a.m., I finally answered. I didn't say hello. I just waited. A man's voice came through, angry but restrained. Is this how you want to handle things now? It was Daniel. I stayed quiet. You could have just called me, he said. I said nothing. He huffed. You seriously want to pull out of the house agreement over a comment Claire made at the wedding? You're blowing this way out of proportion. Still quiet. Finally, I spoke. You stood there and said nothing. That was the part I can't get past. He went silent for a moment, then came back colder. So this is punishment? No, I said. This is correction. He exhaled through his nose, clearly irritated. Mom, you're being ridiculous. No, I repeated calm. I was ridiculous for the last 4 years. This is the first logical thing I've done in a long time. He started raising his voice. Do you know what this is going to do to us financially? I didn't answer that, because yes, I did know. That was the point. That night, I met Frank again at his office. We sat down and reviewed the contract together, line by line. He was meticulous. He read aloud the clause Daniel and Claire had both signed back when I helped them get the loan. In the event of gross disrespect, abandonment, or alienation by either homeowner toward the cosigner reserves the right to revoke financial contribution and demand liquidation or sale of property in order to recoup investment. Claire had insisted that language be harmless at the time. She thought it was ceremonial, something to make me feel protected. She had said, "We'd never make you feel unwanted, Margaret. This is just a formality." Now it wasn't a formality. Now it was real. Frank nodded at me. They can try to challenge it, but it's solid. It's going to hold. I sat back in the chair. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't revenge. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt clear. Frank continued, "If they want to keep the house, they'll have to buy you out entirely or sell it. They won't be able to refinance in time without your signature, and you're not required to give it." I said, "I won't." On Saturday morning, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Claire. I didn't open it at first. She knocked again. I waited a few seconds, then slowly turned the handle. She stood there in leggings and a big sweatshirt, sunglasses covering her eyes even though it was cloudy. She didn't say hi. Her tone was clipped. "You really want to do this? Margaret?" I leaned on the doorframe. "You're on my porch, Claire. If you came here to insult me again, it's not going to go how you expect." She ignored that and pushed forward. "You're throwing away your relationship with your son," I answered without blinking. "You did that already. I'm just closing the account." She shifted her weight, crossed her arms. "You're bitter." "No," I said. "I'm finished." She tried a different tactic. "This will ruin Daniel's credit. We'll lose the house. Is that really what you want?" I asked. "Why do you want to live in a house paid for by someone you screamed at in public?" She didn't answer. I waited. I gave her time to think of something, but she couldn't. Then she muttered, "We didn't think you'd actually go through with it." And there it was, the real truth. They thought I was a doormat, a guaranteed backup plan. They thought I wouldn't dare do anything because I never had before. I didn't answer. I just closed the door. The lock clicked behind me. On Monday, I received an email from the mortgage bank confirming that the lien withdrawal process had officially started. It would take about 6 to 8 weeks. During that time, Daniel and Claire would have to prove they could assume the full loan on their own or agree to a forced sale. I didn't respond. Frank handled all communication from that point forward. By Thursday, Daniel called again. I didn't pick up. Then he texted, "Daniel, Mom, please, just talk to me. Daniel, this doesn't have to go this way. We can fix it. Daniel, I'm sorry, okay? Can we just meet?" I stared at the messages for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. That night, I slept a full 8 hours. First time in months. The next morning, Frank emailed saying Daniel had contacted the bank. They were officially notified of the repayment request. Claire had also called their office, sounding, according to Frank, entitled and panicked at the same time. I didn't care what she sounded like. I cared that they finally realized I wasn't bluffing. The following Sunday, I went to church. A few people asked about the wedding. I just smiled politely and said, it was fine. Nobody needed to know more. The humiliation was behind me. I was done replaying it. After the service, I stopped by the farmer's market. I bought fresh bread and apricot jam. It had been a long time since I allowed myself something small and nice. At home, I started cleaning out my old filing cabinet. I found Daniel's childhood drawings, report cards, even a Mother's Day card from when he was 11. It said, "Thank you for everything you do. I love you. One day I'll buy you a big house and you'll never have to worry again." I stared at it a long time. Then I put it back in the envelope and placed it in a locked drawer, because now I knew. Some promises don't age well. The final version of the letter took me 3 days to write, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I needed it to say. And I wanted it to be impossible to twist. I didn't want it to sound emotional. I didn't want it to leave space for them to call me irrational or dramatic or hurt and overreacting. I wanted it to read like a statement of facts, calm, direct, without insult. Frank reviewed it. He suggested only one change, to remove the word humiliated and replace it with publicly disrespected. He said it would sound cleaner if they ever tried to use it in court. I agreed. So the final version was printed, placed in an envelope with Claire's name written in my handwriting, and delivered by courier. Not regular mail. That could be ignored. A courier would hand it to her directly. I wanted to be sure she saw it, touched it, read it. The letter arrived on a Thursday. I knew that because I received the delivery confirmation at 11:42 a.m. By 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I didn't answer. At 2:07 p.m., Claire texted, "Claire, you've made your point. Hope you're satisfied." Then another one, "Claire, this is a low blow, even for you." And then one more, about 15 minutes later, "Claire, don't ever contact us again." I read them in silence, then deleted all 3, but I kept a copy of the letter on my desk, just in case they tried to spin it another way. It said, "Claire, You made it clear at your wedding that I was no longer welcome in your life. You said it in front of 100 guests. You said it without hesitation, and Daniel stood beside you in silence. Over the last 4 years, I've contributed over $53,000 to the mortgage on the house you now live in. I provided the down payment and continued to pay monthly installments without ever asking for repayment, gratitude, or recognition. I helped because I believed in supporting my son. What I received in return was exclusion, public ridicule, and complete erasure from the family I helped build. As you may or may not recall, your mortgage agreement included a clause protecting my right to withdraw support in the event of disrespect, alienation, or abuse. This clause was not decorative. It was not symbolic. It was binding. I am now formally invoking that clause. The property must either be refinanced without my involvement or sold in accordance with the repayment schedule agreed upon in the original terms. This is not negotiable. I will not attend further meetings. I will not argue. I will not be guilted into reversing this decision. Actions have consequences. Margaret. It was short. 2 pages total. No threats, no passive-aggressive wording, just reality. That same evening, I ordered Chinese food for dinner and watched a documentary on PBS. Nothing dramatic. I didn't sit and wait for more messages. I didn't cry. I didn't stare out the window hoping they'd apologize. I had crossed the line, and I wasn't going back. But the next day, there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole. It was Daniel. I waited a moment before opening it. He looked exhausted, eyes puffy, hair messy. He held a piece of paper in his hand, but I couldn't see what it was. He didn't say hi. He said, "Why are you doing this?" I looked at him. "Because I don't owe you silence anymore." His mouth opened, but no words came out. After a long pause, he asked, "Do you even care what this is doing to me?" I said, "Do you care what that moment at your wedding did to me?" His hand tightened on the paper. I said, "You watched your wife scream at me. You watched the room laugh, and you stood there." He shook his head. I didn't laugh. "You didn't stop her either." He started to say something, but I cut him off. "You had every chance to call me afterward, to check on me, to ask how I felt, but instead, you waited until I made a financial move, and only then did you show up at my door." He didn't deny it. Then, finally, he held out the paper. It was an offer letter from a mortgage broker. It said they'd be willing to refinance, but the terms were much worse. Higher interest, additional fees. He said, "We'll lose the house if you don't stop this." I said, "You should have thought about that before Claire told me I smelled like mothballs in front of your entire guest list." He looked down, and then he did something that surprised me. He said, "I'm sorry, but it didn't feel like an apology. It felt like a calculation." I said, "If you're really sorry, then move out. Start over. Learn how to stand on your own 2 feet." I did. He said, "We don't have the money to pay you back." I said, "Then sell the house, or Claire's car, or her collection of handbags." He opened his mouth again, and I stopped him with one last line. "I'm not your safety net anymore." Then I closed the door and locked it. Inside, I sat down, heart pounding. But it wasn't regret. It wasn't guilt. It was the rush of finally speaking out loud what had been stuck in my chest for years. By Monday morning, Frank called me with an update. Their attorney reached out. They're considering a voluntary sale. They won't fight the clause. I said, "Good." He asked, "Do you want to be informed of the process?" I said, "Only when the check clears." He laughed, not because it was funny, but because he knew how long I had waited to say that. It was a little past noon on a Wednesday when I saw their car stop in front of my house. Claire's white SUV, the same one she used to brag about, the one she said made her feel like a real professional, even though I knew Daniel was the one making the payments on it. I was eating lunch at the kitchen table, just soup and crackers. I watched through the front window without getting up. Claire got out first. She didn't knock right away. She stood at the bottom of the steps, arms folded, pacing like she was rehearsing something in her head. Then she walked up and knocked twice. Loud, short knocks. I took my time opening the door. When I did, she looked me up and down and said, "We need to talk." I stayed in the doorway. "You have a lawyer. Use them." She narrowed her eyes. "Can you not act like some business executive for 5 minutes? This is real life." "I'm well aware," I said. Daniel was still in the car, parked at the curb, engine running. He wasn't coming up the steps. He didn't even look in my direction. Claire was here alone, sent like a messenger. Or, more likely, like a weapon. She held a folder in her hands. She waved it slightly. These are our numbers. Proof we can't sell the house right now without taking a major loss. I didn't take the folder. She held it there for another moment, then tucked it under her arm. She said, "We're trying to refinance. The bank wants to talk to you." "I already said no," I replied. "We're not asking for more money. We're just asking you to reconsider the clause." I looked her in the eye. "You screamed at me on your wedding day. You made me a joke in front of everyone. And now that the bills are coming due, suddenly I'm someone worth talking to?" She looked away for a moment, then said, "I overreacted." "No, Claire. You revealed how you really feel." She took a slow breath. "Daniel's upset." I nodded once. "He should be." Her jaw clenched. "You're not even willing to talk? After everything he's done for you?" I blinked. "Everything he's done for me?" She shifted. "He's been there. He let you into his life. He invited you to the wedding." "You're not helping your case," I said flatly. Her tone turned sharp. "You're being impossible." "No," I said, stepping one foot outside now. "I was easy for years. I was quiet. I was generous. I paid your mortgage. I fixed your broken water heater. I even paid for your kitchen backsplash. I covered things I didn't need to, and I never used it against you. But the moment I asked for respect, you turned me into an inconvenience." She tried to speak again, but I didn't let her. "You said I didn't belong at your wedding. You mocked me in public. And now I'm supposed to help you keep your house?" Her mouth stayed shut. I pointed at the folder in her arms. "What's in there won't change anything." Then I stepped back and closed the door. Through the peephole, I saw her stand there for maybe 15 seconds. Then she turned around and stomped down the steps. Daniel still hadn't gotten out of the car. She got in, slammed the door, and the SUV drove off. Later that night, I found a voicemail on my phone from Daniel. "Mom, I'm sorry she came by like that. Bye. She thought maybe she could reason with you. We're in a tight spot. You know we are. The house means a lot to us, and it means a lot to me. I never wanted things to go like this. But if you really think this is the right thing to do, then I guess I can't stop you." No apology for standing by while Claire embarrassed me. No acknowledgement of what really started this, just a polite surrender. I didn't respond. The following week, Frank called. The house had officially gone on the market. The bank wasn't willing to refinance under Daniel and Claire's names alone, not with their credit and income levels. The only choice left was a sale. I asked Frank if they had tried to delay anything. He said no. I asked how long it would take. He said most likely 6 to 10 weeks. That same afternoon, I received an email from the real estate agent representing the property. They asked if I had any objections to the listing photos or description. I didn't. I didn't care. By Saturday, the listing was live. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. On Sunday, I went to the hardware store and bought new paint for my guest room. I moved the boxes of Daniel's childhood things out of the closet and into the attic. I would sort them later. I spent the day painting in silence. No radio, no TV, just me and a brush. When I finished, I stood in the doorway and looked at the fresh walls. Light gray, clean, neutral, ready for a new purpose. That night, I made tea and opened my journal, something I hadn't written in for months. I wrote, "Today, Claire stood on my porch and asked for my help. The same woman who told me to leave her wedding and mocked me in front of strangers. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't admit she was wrong. She just asked for the house back. I said no. For the first time in my life, I said no. And I meant it. Then I closed the notebook and went to bed. I slept with the window open. The air was cool, and the quiet was mine. It took 54 days for the house to sell. I didn't visit it once during that time. I didn't drive past, didn't look up the listing photos, didn't ask about the open houses. Frank handled everything. I asked him to notify me only when the sale was final and the wire transfer completed. He respected that. On the 55th day, I received a call from his office. The property had closed. The funds were already in my account. My portion was a little over $61,000, slightly more than I expected, but not by much. Enough to recover most of what I had put in over the years. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about not letting them walk away with everything. A few hours after the deposit cleared, I got a text from Daniel. "Daniel, the house is gone. We're staying at a friend's place for now. I don't know what else to say." There was a second message minutes later. "Daniel, I guess you really meant it." I turned off my phone and left it on the kitchen counter. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked out to the backyard, sat in one of the plastic chairs under the tree, and stayed there for almost an hour. Just breathing. Just listening to the sound of my neighbor mowing his lawn. The hum of normal life happening around me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was back in control of mine. I didn't hear from Claire again. Not a word. No texts. No notes. No visits. Whatever version of herself she tried to maintain, the charming, composed professional, cracked the day she stood on my porch and realized she couldn't manipulate me anymore. She never came back after that. 3 weeks after the sale, I made another decision. I didn't want to stay in the house I was in. Not because it held bad memories, it didn't, but because I was ready to change something. Not out of spite, just because I finally could. So I contacted a local realtor and sold it. It wasn't a big house and it wasn't in a trendy neighborhood, but it sold quickly. I used the money to buy a small one-bedroom cottage about 20 minutes away. A little quieter. Fewer neighbors. A small garden out back. Moving was easier than I thought it would be. I only took what I wanted to keep. The rest I donated or left behind. I kept a few photos of Daniel when he was younger. One of him in his Little League uniform. One from his graduation. I didn't keep any recent ones. None from the wedding. The dress I wore that day, I gave it to a local church that runs a donation center. The shoes, too. I never wanted to see either again. In the new house, I unpacked slowly. I didn't rush. I didn't worry about having everything in place right away. It was the first time I could arrange my space without anyone else's input, and I liked that feeling. I bought new curtains, a new rug, a new coffee maker. I even started attending a weekly gardening club, something I had always wanted to try but never felt like I had the energy or time for. The women there were kind. They didn't ask too many questions. They didn't know anything about Daniel or Claire or the wedding. To them, I was just Margaret, a retired woman who liked chrysanthemums and didn't mind getting dirt under her fingernails. One afternoon, while planting in the back garden, I found myself thinking about Daniel again. Not angrily, not bitterly, just thinking. I wondered if he ever really understood what happened, if he saw it as betrayal or just another setback in a life where things didn't go as planned. But I didn't wonder for long, because the truth was, it no longer mattered what he thought. I had made my choice, and I had followed through. There was no part of me that felt guilty, no part of me that wished I had handled it differently. They had counted on my silence. They had counted on me doing what I always did. Forgive, overlook, move on, pay the bill, clean up the mess. This time I didn't. This time I showed them that silence has a limit, and that when it breaks clean. A month after I moved, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten. Inside was a single page. It was from Daniel. He didn't beg. He didn't argue. He didn't try to make excuses. He wrote, "You made your decision. I understand that now. I don't know if I'll ever fully agree with how it all went down, but I know I let it happen. I stood there. I didn't defend you. That's on me. Claire and I are no longer living together. Maybe we will again, maybe not. I'm not writing this to get anything from you. Just to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve what happened at the wedding, and I hope someday you'll think about talking to me again. If not, I'll still understand. Daniel." I folded the letter once and placed it in the back of my drawer. Under the old photos, I didn't respond. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I won't. But either way, I no longer live under their roof, literally or emotionally. And in that silence they left me in, I finally built something that was mine.